My name is Trevor Leeson. I work for Theorem Solutions. What I want to do today is talk to you about people who are actually starting this journey into the world of digital realities. So things for you to consider when you actually start working in this space. So I'm not really aiming this talk at people who have got long-standing knowledge in this area. What I want to do is I want to cover a brief overview of who Theorem are, giving you an insight into Theorem as a company, where our backgrounds come from, what's actually led us ourselves down this journey, and to actually give you some benefits, but also give you an insight into some of the considerations that you need to make when you're actually working and venturing into this space. So Theorem has existed for 30 years. Our foundation was based on CAD data translation. So we've worked from the mechanical CAD sector, moving data from one format to another, initially primarily for collaborative engineering type activities. And it's only more recently that we've actually moved into making this data available to the world of VR. As I've said, our traditional users would actually use data for supply collaboration, or even documentation creation. And it's only in recent times that we've actually introduced what we are terming digital realities. So digital realities from Theorem Solutions is a brand of products. It's not a single product, it's a brand of products. And those products enable people to work in augmented, mixed, or virtual reality. And we deliver it through an experience. So to be very clear, there's no industry standard to talk about virtual reality or mixed reality. So when I actually use the term virtual reality, I'm talking about the fact that you're working with a immersive headset, something like the HTC Vive or Oculus Rift, so it's fully obscuring your view. Augmented reality is where you're using devices such as a tablet, where you're using the tablet to see something that is digital, but potentially seeing it in the context of something that is physical. And then for mixed reality is again where you're wearing a headset, but this time the headset enables you to see through the lens and see a holographic representation of the object, but you're seeing it in context of the real life. A good example, but not a unique example, is the Microsoft HoloLens. It's a mixed reality device. Where is the market, today's digital reality market? Virtual reality is not new. Virtual reality has existed now for over 20 years. You will go and see virtual reality experiences in lots of large OEMs where they have got very well implemented environments for power walls and caves. But what has actually changed is the introduction of new low-cost devices. Introduction of new low-cost devices is what I'm really talking about as being a game changer in recent times to actually make available information at a lower entry point. Some of the power wall environments, some of the caves that you actually go and see inside some of these large OEMs are very expensive to implement. To implement VR, AR, MR, you're talking about a lot lower cost. But it actually brings with it a fair amount of challenges. A fair amount of challenges to actually get your data into this workspace. So what we're seeing that lots of the large OEMs are looking for this lower cost technology to potentially broaden the usage of the data in this environment throughout their organizations. One of the things that they've experienced is that their large digital environments have workflow problems, limitations on how much data that they can actually get processed and how they can actually expose it to broader sectors of the company. Whereas this low-cost technology gives them the opportunity to actually broaden the usage. Gartner, the industrial IT research company, published what they call the hype cycle for emerging technologies. And based upon this is basically looking at the expectation of technology and looking at a period over time. So they talk about the fact that in the early implementations of technology, there is a lot of expectation, but that expectation is not necessarily always realized, so then it falls down into what they call this pit of despair before it actually becomes fully mature and becomes a mature technology. If you look at where virtual reality is today, where Gartner project where virtual reality is, where mixed reality is, where augmented reality is, you'll see that it's at various stages throughout this cycle of evolution of technology. So in reality, what you're seeing is that as more use of a particular technology becomes more broadly used, more widely used, more easy to use, then it will mature over time. But in the early phases, there are lots of investments that don't necessarily mature and give full-fledged product capabilities. So this is one of the challenges. One of the challenges is the fact that on this diagram for the left-hand curve, you've got the commercial VR. So this is the long-standing, well-implemented technology that's been around for years. High cost, limited availability within an organization. So I'm not saying it's limited for you to acquire it, but because of its implementation, because of its availability through an organization, it's limited on how much of a business can actually make use of it. Very often used in automotive and aerospace. It's been around for years, driven by niche suppliers. On the right-hand side of this curve, you've got the changes that are taking place. These are the consumer VR technologies. These are the things that are really being driven with a lower cost rate, easier implementation. And the challenge is actually to converge these two worlds. So what's different? What's different about the technology that we've now got to the technology that's been around? Well, one of the big key differences is the fact that it's being driven not by engineering, it's being driven by the games market. So, as Ben mentioned earlier, it's driven by the likes of Microsoft, Apple. It's being driven using technology like Unity and Unreal Engine, which is basically a gaming technology. Now, when it comes to actually utilizing your CAD information, one of the biggest problems with your CAD information, because it's precise mathematical presentation of your definitions, it's very bloated, it's very heavyweight. It's too heavyweight to actually get into some of these game engines. And as a consequence, the CAD data needs to be prepared. That's been one of the challenges that Ben touched on, and has been a challenge for years for some of the older systems. The more established systems spend days actually getting the data migrated into these environments. So taking your definition and getting it into this world is a challenge, because quite often the data will need to be optimized. It's not 100% necessary, depends upon the technology that you're using, depends upon the hardware that you're using. But some of this hardware definitely needs a level of optimization to actually make it usable. So what's Theorem providing? We're providing a means for you to take your CAD data. So we're providing an automated means because of our longevity of working with CAD and also working with the CAD OEMs themselves. We're development partners of Dassault, Siemens, PTC. we give you direct access to that data. Not only do we give you access to the data, we give you a means to manage the representations that you create and give you a means to optimize the data as part of the process. What we don't do is we don't prepare data for a particular utilization. We prepare data totally agnostic of whether you're using it in augmented reality, mixed reality, or virtual reality. So you are preparing the data once, but that data is then available to be used. This is the architecture that we've actually developed. The lower left-hand corner shows a representation of silos of information that effectively represent your current PLM environment. So this is where you're currently holding all of your CAD data. It's also the area where you're holding potentially your manufacturing instruction information, your material configuration information. So this is your current existing silos. As a workflow, you would publish that data and you'd publish it to what we term the experience server. And the process of publishing the data to the experience server gives you also the capability of optimizing. So now the data has been published for purpose of digital realities. Having published the data onto the server, then any of the client devices, so whether you've got an Oculus Rift, an HTC Vive, a HoloLens, they can access the data, so it would stream it down to the device. So it streams it down to the device, and then you can experience it within that device. You can also use it now to communicate back to your silos. So you can communicate back to your silos and actually draw into this visualization world any metadata that you can actually have access to. So you could present real-life metadata in context to graphical data that you're visualizing. And that's all achieved by web services. So as I said, what we give you access to is we give you access to product structure, the assembly, bill of materials of your objects. So you can actually visualize the bill of materials by decomposing the assembly, breaking it down, seeing sub-assemblies, or building it back up. We give you access to any of the metadata that is stored within the object. And these objects could, as I say, could come from a variety of CAD sources. We support from Dassault, we support CATIA V5, we also support 3D Experience. From Siemens, we support NX, we support SolidWorks, Creo, Parametric, so a whole host of what we would consider the main CAD systems that actually come from the world of mechanical design. From an experiences viewpoint, this again is what you can then do with the data. So from an experiences viewpoint, we provide a number of pre-built experiences. One is a visualization experience, which this is the one that I talked about, gives you full access visually to your object, allows you to break it apart from an assembly structure viewpoint. We also provide a design review experience. A design review experience is where you could actually have multiple users looking at the same object, experiencing the same object, potentially multiple viewers in different time zones, so you can message between each other, you can leave messages around the object. We also provide a design review with digital twin. Now, a design review with digital twin brings you into one of the more challenging areas, and that is where if you actually want to lock your digital data in the context of physical data. So if you actually want to register something that is digital in the context of physical, which is different to actually using augmented reality, where you actually might want to look at something physical and get digital data about that physical object presented to you. So both of those capabilities where you can either lock an object on or actually feed data back. Manufacturing assembly structures, so we can actually replay. So if you've got a manufacturing build sequence that is available, then we can replay that such that you can visualize a build sequence taking place. And lastly, plant layout information. If you actually want to digitally create a plant layout, where you could actually bring libraries of objects together, position them within a virtual space, and then save out that assembly configuration that you've actually prepared, save that out back out to your design world. So what do you need to do next? So you, the people who are actually potentially venturing into this space, some of the things that we think that you need to do is you need to consider where is best for you to utilize this technology. Think about what you actually, where you think there will be benefit in your organization from using this technology. Next thing you've got to do is you've got to choose some devices. Go and buy some devices that you actually want to work with. I'm not saying go and buy them all. So if you think that you want to work in an environment that is fully immersive, go and buy a VR device, go and buy an AR device, or a mixed reality device. But the thing to recognize is the investment that you make in this hardware technology will change. It will always change. There is such a vast array of hardware that is currently available, that is being updated, that is new hardware coming into the market. Over the next 12 to 18 months, hardware will change. So be prepared that the investment that you make in hardware is likely to change. Think about which technology you want to do. Think about, do I actually want to do augmented reality, mixed reality? Think about what it is that you actually think you will gain a return on investment in using this technology. And then finally, take a step into this world. Initiate a proof of concept. Initiate a chosen use case. Buy something out of the box. Buy something out of the box to get experience of what it is that this is going to benefit your organization. Explore what's possible and work out how to do it. So thankfully, I have got an animation. So thankfully, you're not going to boo me, although the animation is, if there are any questions, I know we're running tight to schedule, but if there are any questions, then please seek me out. We do have a live demonstration. We have a booth. We have a booth over in the main facility. It's in the Mead Gallery. There is stand 5455. Come and see us. We've got technology. We've got access to show you information today. Thank you very much.